Welcome, everyone. Sorry for the delay. This is a regular scheduled meeting properly advertised of the Board of Adjustment of the Village of Pinehurst. It is September 6th, and it is 4:37 in the afternoon. We do have a quorum. I will call the meeting to order, and it is necessary to appoint an alternate to sit with us as a voting member today, since we have 4 permanent members. The 4 permanent members are Leo Santarosa, David Kelly, Jules Latham, and me, Fred Engelfried. And because we have 2 alternates available, our protocol says that we need to nominate and appoint one. I would nominate Cindy Burnett to serve as an alternate at today's meeting. Could I have a second for that? Second from Leo. Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You're a voter. This procedure is being, at least audio, I don't know if it's being videoed. Is it being videoed also? Okay, so we have to use the microphones better than I usually do. And the first item of business coming before us is the approval of our August 2nd meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Any comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes of the August 2nd, 2018 Board of Adjustment meeting.
Second, please.
Second.
Second from Jules Latham. Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. With regard to the public hearing that we will be conducting in a few minutes, do any of us sitting at this table have a financial interest in the outcome, a conflict of interest, have had any ex parte communications about the matter prior to this meeting? No declarations? All right, we will proceed. By our own protocol, not necessarily specified by anything else, when we pass the gavel, I like to do it by motion. I would like to pass the gavel for the public hearing and the balance of this meeting to Jules Latham, and that would be a motion from me.
I second that motion.
Second from David. Thank you. Voice vote.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to recess from our regular meeting and enter into public hearing number 1.
Moved.
I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We have now recessed from our regular meeting and have entered a public hearing. This public hearing is in regard to the property at 95 Oak Hills Road. Anyone who wishes to offer testimony in this regard, please come forward to be sworn in. Oh,
You can ask them. State your names.
Flanagan. Alex Cameron.
Bob Farron.
Janet DeMarco.
Dominic DeMarco.
And do you all swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
I'd like to remind everyone here today that the Board of Adjustment's decision will be based on competent, material, and substantial evidence that has been properly entered into the record. Alex, can we ask you to please read the notice into the record and provide any relevant backstory before we move forward?
The purpose of this public hearing is to receive testimony for a variance request from Section 9.2A, Table of Dimensional Requirements, Lakefront Golf Course Setback from Property Line for the property at 95 Oak Hills Road, Pinehurst, North Carolina. This property is also defined as Moore County Parcel ID number 000-23786. This property is located within the R10 High Density Residential Zoning District. Specifically, the applicant, Kent Smith, attorney for James P. Flanagan, is requesting a variance from the 30-foot lakefront golf course setback from the property line to allow a constructed patio that currently encroaches plus or minus 2.8 feet. I can attest that the property has been properly posted, adjacent owners have been notified, and I would like to enter the staff report into the record that you guys received. And I know most of you guys are somewhat familiar with the structure itself. You have evidence there that was also submitted by the applicant that shows sort of the photos, also the existing survey that does indicate that encroachment into the golf course.
Alex?
To answer any further questions, if there's more information you would like at this time, I'll be glad to give that. If not, I will give the seat and table up to the applicant and sit nearby.
That sounds fine. Thank you. Let's see. Mr. Smith, would you like to come forward and make a statement on behalf of your client?
May I confer just a moment with Mr. Cameron?
Sure. Yes.
Madam Chairman, on Tuesday, I delivered over to the,
I think you're being asked to be a little closer to the mic. Thank you.
on Tuesday, Dr. Flanagan had obtained signatures of support for various neighbors who could see the patio, and I delivered that petition over on Tuesday morning, or that statement of support on Tuesday morning to the front office, but unfortunately Mr. Cameron was out, and I guess it didn't get to y'all, and I've got copies if you would allow me to present those to you.
I don't know that there's anything we can do with it unless the people are here and are sworn. And I saw one couple be sworn. Are they on the list? So they're covered.
This matter is before the board on the request of my client, Dr. Jim Flanagan, for a variance. And I guess the proper request is to allow the currently existing patio to remain in place and not to have to be removed in whole or in part. The northeast corner of the patio, according to the survey, is 2.8 feet, more or less, into the 30-foot setback for the golf course. So I guess the proper way to present this would be that we would be asking for approval of a variance to allow it, the structure to be, I guess, approximately 27 feet perhaps from the boundary line, if that's the way to state it. I'm not exactly sure how y'all do that. You have the materials before you that we had submitted. I'd like to, and I know each one of you, I believe, were here at the prior hearing that we had on a slightly different matter, but I'd like to just quickly have Dr. Flanagan summarize again sort of how we got here. Dr. Flanagan, you are an orthopedic surgeon and you practice in Fayetteville, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
All right. And at the time that you decided to construct this patio, how did you go about finding a contractor?
When I decided that I was going to build the patio along with the retaining wall for the water issues, I've gone and looked at materials, and basically asked around who was the best contractor and who did the best job at construction and building this. And KBT Construction was who everybody said did the best job. So I selected Bob Bouchier and hired him to build the patio for me.
Did you have any knowledge of setback requirements, where your boundaries were, building permits, any of those requirements?
I did not. I trusted that he would do that properly, yes.
To do whatever was necessary for the turnkey job?
Yes.
And could you tell the board, when you went to construct the patio, what considerations were involved and where the patio would be relative to the golf course and any water issues you were experiencing?
I think you can see on some of the photos there towards the back that that area of the yard gets quite a bit of water runoff from the street, from the golf course, and various drains that drain down into that area. And before the patio was there, that water sort of ran right up towards the foundation of the house. So I was not only building the deck as a patio, but also as a barrier to redirect that water a little bit back down towards the sewer systems. And so the consideration was to put the retaining wall at that level there where the water started to come towards the house, to build that up and kick it out of the way. And if I was going to build the retaining wall there, then I just put the deck on, the patio on top of it for aesthetic purposes.
Did it accomplish that purpose?
It did, yes. Yeah, and you can see where, in some of those pictures, where the water kind of runs right up to the patio now and sort of takes a left-hand turn and moves away from the house. So, the positioning of the patio was really based on where the water was flowing down through the yard, where we put the end of it.
And what was the grade like there as you came out of your back door? Is it flat there, or is it?
No, it was a steep grade, and you can see from the side views of the patio that it's probably about a 6-foot drop off from the level of the patio. So that hillside, that water just washed down off of there, and there were large ruts and things in the hillside. So if you walked out of the house heading towards the golf course, you could step in a pretty big hole going down that hill, so it was a little bit of a hazard as well.
And the photographs that are part of the ones that are toward the end of the package there's some still video shots there that are taken.
Yes.
Was that taken during a rainstorm?
Normal rains. Those were taken probably a month or 6 weeks ago when we had some of our heavy rains, but it's a pretty consistent amount of water that comes off anytime we get a decent rain.
So are you getting it off the golf course as well as out
the
of the
street.
drainage culvert?
Yeah, that culvert comes from the other side of the golf course, but a lot of that comes off of the street, because the street pitches from both sides, above and on down towards that area.
And is your house and where the patio is that of a lower grade than where the street is up on Oak Hill?
It is. Yeah.
And how long have you lived there at that home?
6 years.
Since the patio was constructed, have you had any complaints from anyone regarding the placement of the patio, or that it was in any way interfering with anyone, whether it's the golf course or anything else?
No, not at all. Actually, pretty much daily, the golfers come by and say hi and nice patio, or we like what you did, or something like that. So nobody's come by and said anything negative about it.
And with respect to the construction of that patio, which was something that you wanted to do for your family, did you have to come out horizontally because of the grade of the land?
Yeah, they had to build the retaining wall for the water and then fill in behind it to make it level with the grade of the patio behind it, yes.
Do you know approximately how deep the footers are?
They buried 2 rows of those 18-inch blocks, so they're a good 2 feet plus gravel below them, yeah.
As you know, when you applied for the building permit, you weren't able to get a permit because of the encroachment of that one part of the corner, the northeast corner. With respect to if you had to remove the patio itself or that corner, that just part of the 2.8 feet that encroaches into the setback, do you have an opinion as to how involved that would be and how costly?
Well, I think it would be fairly costly, but just from digging up the retaining wall and the footings, if I put a corner or an edge there, I think the water would just pull up in there and eventually would take the whole thing down. I mean, it would destroy the patio. It would just turn into a big sinkhole right in front of it where the water sat. If I kind of cornered it or took that edge off, that water would just hit it like a wall.
What would it do aesthetically to take one of the corners off?
I think it would look odd. I mean, from the golf course, it would look like, why would you do that? Because, I mean, it's pretty symmetric. The steps are built into the structure of it so they don't stick out. It's nice and clean. But I think if we took a chunk of it out, we'd have to reconfigure the steps, do something to the retaining wall. It would be pretty involved, yes.
Is the area, to your knowledge, is the area where the encroachment is, that approximately 2.8 feet, is that within the playable area of the golf course?
No, it's well off the golf course. I've never even had a ball come that far into the house or towards there. It might come about halfway into the grassy area there, but it doesn't come up that far. So it's well out of visual play and actual play of the golf course.
And again, was your failure to obtain the building permit, was that done in any way knowing or intentional on your part?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Would have been much easier to get the building permit.
Those are the questions I have for Dr. Flanagan. I have just a couple of other short witnesses, but however the board wants to proceed with that.
I would say we can move on.
Leo
I don't have any questions.
Leo has a question.
Questions?
I have no questions.
Leo?
Dr. Flanagan, the survey prepared on your behalf by Stephen R. Sheffield, I assume you have a copy of it handy there?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how much square footage area of that total patio, which I believe is
corner.
35 by 20, how much of that corner or triangle is represented?
It's 2.8 feet from the edge of the patio. It's probably not more than 10% or probably less. It's probably about 20 to 30 square feet of a 400, 500 square foot patio. It's more of the retaining wall and the pillars than it is the actual portion of the patio. It's
Okay.
mostly the wall not really the surface.
Again, referring to the survey map, there's a dashed line between your property line and the 30-foot setback. Do you know what that is?
Yes, that's an additional piece of property that I own. The whole lot is technically two pieces of property that were merged together when I bought the lot, so
So that little strip there was an added tract?
I don't know when it was it was part of the original property when I bought it. It came as a package deal. It was
Could that have been a drainage easement?
I don't believe so because it was given a separate line on the property when I purchased it.
But it is part of the total lot.
Part of the total lot, yes.
You said the drainage in periods of storm encroaches into the building foundation?
No, it gets in where the house is, there was a hillside, and it was eroding under the hillside, but left to its own devices eventually. Water usually wins.
From the photographs, it looks like the area between your patio, the new patio, and the property line has been resodded. Is that right?
No, I mean, I cut the grass there and, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it may have, some of the pictures may be on a day where I hadn't cut it in a while, but it hasn't been resodded. Actually, I'm trying to kill all those weeds there, but
It hasn't been replaced as a result of washout from a storm.
well, not in the area where the grass is, where the area where the pine straw is, I routinely have to rake it all up, fill back in with dirt. I've put dozens of bags of rocks and French drains to try to keep the dirt in place. It's been an ongoing battle for 6 years.
But that's going to continue, right?
Yeah, I just didn't want it to take away as it got closer to the house, it got more concerning.
While Leo is checking his notes, it appears the date of the survey is January 18th or 19th of this year. Was that done was the survey done after the construction?
Yes, it was done at the request of the village, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Part of the building permit
Permit,
process
yeah.
when you went and applied for the permit. Right.
How far is actual playing surface of the golf course from your property line?
If where the out-of-bounds stake is, to the deck is more than 30 feet, but to my property line, after they dug up the stakes, it's about a yard and a half, about 3 feet.
How far from the property line to the edge of the green on that hole?
Estimating, I would say 60 feet or more, at least. Mr. Farron could probably answer that better.
I was wondering, Mr. Smith, if you were intending to call on Mr. Farron?
I was.
Oh, okay, we'll get there then. Thank you.
Is there much drainage that comes off of the golf course in that particular area toward your property?
Not too
A
much.
major problem?
Not too much that comes off the green. If it's a heavy rain, it'll run down that hill. The majority of it comes from the hole that's across the street where the culvert is, and then from the street itself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Flanagan? Okay, then let's proceed. Do you have any other witnesses that you'd like to call, Mr. Smith?
Call Mr. Farron. How would he sit here?
Or you can stand at the microphone, whatever is more convenient.
I can stand, it's easier to run that way.
Would you state your name and your occupation, sir?
Yeah, I'm Bob Farron, I'm the Director of Golf Courses and Grounds for Pinehurst, the adjacent property owner.
And Mr. Farron, are you familiar with where the patio is that's constructed on Dr. Flanagan's property?
Yes, sir.
And did Dr. Flanagan approach you on behalf of Pinehurst Resorts and ask you?
Yes.
Pinehurst Resorts' position?
Upon my review of it and subsequent conversations with other decision makers above me, I have the authority to state that we have no issue with the patio as it's constructed. Though it is encroaching all over the setback line, it's still well out of bounds of play for the most people. And it is at least 70 feet from the putting surface itself.
Is there any safety issues resulting
None whatsoever.
any aesthetic issues?
No, sir. No.
You indicated to Dr. Flanagan that he should make an application to resorts to get their approval. Is that correct?
Yes.
That was submitted, and do you know if Mr. Higginbotham, on behalf of resorts, approved that?
Yes, it's been signed and forwarded on somewhere.
Thank you. Any other witnesses that you wish to call, Mr. Smith? Sure.
I do have, Mr. Farron just indicated that this application that we were asked to provide to Pinehurst, I do have a copy of this that I can put into the record if that's something that the board would feel would be appropriate. No, it goes to an adjacent property owner, not to the board, but it's his request that the,
And this is the document, Mr. Farron, that you were referencing, and you can attest to its veracity? Okay. I see no problem having that admitted. Does anyone wish to see?
and if I could call just very briefly, Janet DeMarco and Dominique DeMarco.
Hi. You'll probably need to get Alex to help you adjust that. There you go. You and I have the same problem. Ms. DeMarco, if you can just state your name and your relationship to Dr. Flanagan.
My name is Janet DeMarco, and I am 2 houses away from him.
What's your address?
60 Burning Tree Road.
And what would you like to tell the board with respect to your observation of Dr. Flanagan's patio, and whether you have any objection?
Well, I have a lot of respect for laws, but I also think that in most cases there are exceptions to the rules. And he has built a beautiful patio, and from the golf course, aesthetically, it takes your breath away. And I'm hoping that you will take the exception to the rule in hand and allow this to be continued, because I don't know if any of you have seen it, but he has done a beautiful job, and the golf course men, we live on the golf course, and I can tell that people stop and look and kind of in awe of what he's done. So I'm hoping that you will take into consideration the exception of the rule in this case.
Mr. Marco, have any neighbors approached you about any difficulty with the patio?
Never, except that it's beautiful.
Thank you.
But you did a wonderful job, I think.
If you can state your name and your address again,
Dominic
please.
DeMarco, I live with her. We've been residents since 1995, and I was on the Community Appearance Commission for 6 years. And we live just down the fairway from Dr. Flanagan, and we used to look out the window, and we look right in his backyard because the fairway bends there. And it was always very unattractive, and it was because of the water coming down through there. I mean, it's not just a little rivulet of water, it's a lot of water. And when I first saw it, I thought that a pipe had busted. And that water just floods all over, close to our land even, and floods the golf course. But it really raised havoc with his property, and that's why it looked so unattractive. But since he started landscaping and expanding the lawn and building that patio, it's a very attractive site. And like Janet said, golfers stop and look at it, and they're very pleased with it.
Thank you. Alex, are there any additional comments that the village would like to make at this time?
The village doesn't have anything. I'll be glad to answer any questions from any board members or the applicant.
I have a question for Alex. Do you know the genesis of this 30-foot dimension?
I wish I did. I think, again, this is strictly opinion, so this is not a fact, so don't take it as such, obviously. It's obviously to not impact the golf course. As we know, golf courses are very important to the village of Pinehurst, as it's kind of part of the genesis of Pinehurst itself. But I can't specifically say exactly the 30-foot setback from the golf course and lakefront, what precipitated that, other than to not have a greater impact on it, as we have setbacks for all structures relative to whether they abut a golf course, neighboring property line, et cetera, and that's to keep the impact low on adjacent properties.
Thank you.
Additional comments for either the village or Mr. Flanagan and Mr. Smith? Okay. At this time, we're going to leave the hearing open for our initial discussion in case any questions arise, but then we'll close the hearing before we take our vote. Any initial discussion before we close amongst ourselves? All right. May I have a motion to close the public hearing and re-enter the Board of Adjustment meeting?
So moved.
Second. Oh, Cindy, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are now out of the public hearing, and we've re-entered our regular Board of Adjustment meeting. To summarize the facts of this case, as I understand them, an application is before us for a variance from the setback requirement at 95 Oak Hills Road, Pinehurst. The applicant is requesting a variance for that from the golf course setback for a patio that was constructed prior to receiving a construction permit, and the encroachment is approximately 2.8 feet, more or less. Before we move forward, I want to review the 4 standards of review that we must consider in approving or denying an application for a variance. The first is that a necessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate in the absence of the variance that no reasonable use can be made of the property. Secondly, that the hardship results from the conditions that are peculiar to the property itself, such as location, size, or topography, hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public, may not be the basis for the granting of a variance. Third, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. And then finally, that the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. At this time, we have options available to us. We can approve the variance by a motion, a second, and a roll call vote, or we can approve the variance with conditions, or finally, we can continue the meeting to another date for a determination, motion, second, or roll call vote. Actually, not finally, we can also deny the variance is our final option. At this time, do we have any discussion or motions from the board?
David, were you going to say?
I was. Given the testimony of Mr. Farron and given the application, given the cost that would be involved with doing anything other, I move that we approve the variance without conditions.
I'd like to ask a question before we do that. So this came before the board before, and it was for the approval of the,
It was an administrative action that was being challenged.
okay. And so this is a totally different request.
Yes.
And it does not necessarily result from the actions taken by the applicant because they were not intentional.
I'd like to, in response to your statement, David, reflect that one of the things that we are not supposed to take into consideration is the monetary situation here, that is a hardship. That is not something that we are to take into account. However, I would like to put forward that we had evidence presented about the topography of this particular lot and the situation with water runoff, with the testimony of neighbors. And to my mind, while I feel a great deal of sympathy for Dr. Flanagan as far as the situation with the monetary hardship, I personally feel like I'm bound by our obligation not to consider that. However, I do feel like there's been competent evidence presented as far as the topography and the uniqueness of this lot that makes me inclined to agree with you, but for other reasons.
I'll strike my hardship, financial hardship, and revise it to civil engineering hardship with respect to drainage and foundation encroachment.
I would like to second the motion, and as you know, hardship is in the eyes of the beholder. It's not defined in North Carolina, and I see this as a real hardship, and the way we saw it the first time, we were helpless. I don't feel we're helpless now. One of the questions that I would ask the village after we have a vote is, what can you do about contractors like this? Are there any? And I don't expect an answer, but it's like me asking, could they change the font on the smokestack at the brewery? I'm disgusted that someone would be subjected to that level of lack of competence in dealing with the village, and someone depending on that person to do things properly and right. I find it very offensive, and I hope that there's something, even though it's not within our purview to ask that it be done, that contractors of that ilk can be controlled in a better way. So you have my very strong second, in agreement with all four criteria.
Discussion? What we have here is a lack of communication, or in additional words, perhaps a case of unclean hands, and not particularly laying on the shoulders of the applicant. We're dealing with situations, as you said, Fred, that essentially put the applicant in a position where, to make things equitable and fair, we have to bend some rules.
Substantial justice in item 4, yeah.
So that's just for the record.
I'll add, as long as we're putting things on the record, I know we all do not want a situation where we have people asking for forgiveness instead of permission. And I know that that was not your intent. But that puts us in a very dangerous place because the zoning regulations exist for a reason. And we have, we hear again and again from our community how important it is that we keep the charming look of Pinehurst, that we keep the feel that there's too much change, and people looking to the village to safeguard the ambiance of their community. And here we're very grateful that we don't have a situation where anything that you did hurt that, from the testimony of the people around you and also from the resort itself. But we can see how we would wind up in that situation very quickly. So just for the record, we need to be, as Fred says, if there's any way that we can make sure that our contractors are dealing with the village squarely.
Yeah, if I had to speculate to that point, and it's unrelated to this, there must be hundreds of cases where folks have purchased homes years ago with conditions that were never approved. And were they to come before the village now for a building permit to do something, there'd be discovery of that kind of thing. This doesn't have that age to it, but I find it to be similar in content.
Is there any further discussion before we have a voice vote? Okay, let's do a roll call vote then, please. We'll start down with Cindy.
I affirm.
Affirm.
Approve.
And I approve as well. So at this time, see if I can get the exact language correct. One moment, please. Find it. Can you find it?
What
The exact language to be read in for the approval. Is there any such?
When the,
No, we don't.
No, okay.
We don't need a
Okay.
consistency statement.
Okay, we are fine. We don't need a consistency statement. At this time.
I think if you just announce the next meeting, we're good
All
to
right,
go.
okay, we're good. The next meeting date, if a matter is brought before us, will be Thursday, September 6th, 2018.
October 4th.
Oh, excuse me, October 4th, 2018, at 4:30 PM. Oh, yes, Alex.
Sorry, it's just so awkward standing here, but I was just going to tell you that we do not have a case before us, but if we have enough to get together to just handle business from this meeting, that would be great. But we do have no application for an appeal or a variance to come before us at this time.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
but we do have stuff for P and Z. So be aware that you need to be there.
I move that we adjourn.
Second. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
6:30?